This man bought a second-hand car at auction, thinking he got a true steal. It drove fine, and the price was a bargain for the quality. However, shortly after the purchase, he found out that the vehicle used to be an old police car. It was a surprise, but no deal-breaker. But when he looked inside the door panel of the car, he found something that made his skin turn pale. But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. When Matthew's old car broke down, he was heartbroken. It was the car he got from his father, the vehicle he grew up with, and the car in which he learned to drive. But after years of loyal service, it finally gave up on him. Matthew and his father brought the car to the junkyard together, but both agreed that Matthew needed a new one ASAP. Matthew went online and searched for second-hand cars for the entirety of that evening, eventually landing on a police auction. It was a place where confiscated and impounded vehicles were auctioned off after the original owner failed to make payment. The value of the vehicles was tempting since it lay much lower than that of other auction houses. He took a public transport bus to the impound lot and felt excitement as he entered the property. He was 35 years old, but in a way, this would be the first car he owned himself. He walked around the impound and scanned the rusty old vehicles for the one that was going to be his. And after a few minutes, he spotted the car. "What a beauty," Matthew said, smiling. Matthew inched closer, and right before he reached the car, the lot's owner came out of his quarters and called out to him. "Can I help you, sir?" were his welcoming words. Matthew introduced himself and stated his intentions. "I have an interest in this car, mister. Do you mind if I take a look?" The impound owner obliged and got the keys to the vehicle from his office. He opened the car doors, showed Matthew the inside, and pointed at the gauges. "It hardly has any mileage on it," the lot owner said while sipping his morning coffee. Matthew looked around the inside and under the bonnet and didn't understand why this car was being sold for this cheap price. "What's wrong with it?" The owner said the car was fine as far as he could tell. He explained that he wasn't the official owner of any vehicle on his lot. He just managed the grounds they stood on, so he could only speak about the car's condition after it arrived. "But it seems fine," the man said. Mechanically, this would turn out to be true, but Matthew did not know what was hidden inside the car. He bought the car without knowing its finer past details that would become majorly important later. While driving home, Matthew turned on the radio and listened to soothing country music. "Even the radio works perfectly," Matthew said happily. But during the trip, something happened he did not expect. A rattling sound kept appearing from within the car. It wasn't loud, but it cut through the music like glass. Perhaps it's from standing still for so long, he thought. Matthew drove the car into his garage and decided to investigate his new purchase further. At first, he figured that the problem must have been underneath the hood of the car. Maybe a bolt was loose somewhere, and the engine's vibration made it rattle. But after popping the hood and conducting a quick inspection, Matthew found nothing out of the ordinary. After that, Matthew expanded the search to the inside of the car. But again, nothing. Finally, Matthew studied the paint job of his second-hand sedan. The coat of paint on the car seemed fine at first. Some scratches here and there, but nothing worrying. But when the young man looked closer, he suddenly noticed something odd. Next to the split where the driver's door met the back passenger door, a tiny bit of paint had come off. It wasn't much, and it wasn't something that Matthew would complain about. The car was cheap, after all. But when the young man crouched down and looked a bit closer, Matthew saw something peculiar. There was another paint job underneath the top coat. The paint job intrigued him, so he walked to his workbench and got a paint scraper. What he did next might hurt some car enthusiasts, but Matthew wanted to paint his car a different color anyway. Matthew sat the scraper against the side panel and carefully scratched it. The scraper made an awful sound as it made its way through the top layer, but eventually it revealed a golden letter P underneath. Matthew took a step back because he immediately realized what this car actually was. "This is not just a normal sedan. This is a police vehicle," Matthew said with a clear sound of shock in his voice. The fact that he just bought a police car sends a rush of adrenaline through Matthew's body. Not many people could say the same thing about their first car. After the initial adrenaline of Matthew's discovery died down a bit, he opened the door seat and took a seat inside. But his smile faded once he closed the car door. When he did, the rattling sound immediately appeared again. Matthew realized that the annoying sound was coming from within the door panel. Matthew was curious but didn't want to take the entire car apart to find out. So he called the local police department for answers, but when the officer answered, the call quickly took a serious turn. Matthew explained the refinished paint and mentioned the police emblem hidden underneath. He brought up the rattling sound from the door panel, but the officer cut him off mid-story. The officer sounded puzzled. "Repainted?" he asked. He acknowledged that some police cars were sent to the lot for demolition, but repainting and reselling them? That wasn't standard practice. Doing so would risk putting official police vehicles into civilian hands, a major problem. Matthew stood firm. He had proof. The officer then asked for the license plate. Matthew provided it and could hear the keys tapping in the background. As the officer searched the system, Matthew asked another question that had been bothering him. Could something have come loose inside the door frame during the car's service life? Officer Henry said no. Police cars didn't have hidden compartments in their door panels, but he did find something else, the previous owner. It turned out to be a former officer who had worked in the same district not long ago. His name sounded familiar to the officer. Meanwhile, Matthew took a screwdriver and began prying open the door panel. After some effort, the plastic cover popped off and fell to the ground. Behind it, he saw something that didn't belong, a translucent plastic bag wedged tightly in the metal frame. With a few hard tugs, Matthew freed it. He set the bag on his lap and carefully opened it. Officer Henry, still on speaker, listened in. Matthew's expression changed immediately when he saw what was inside: a gun, a tape recorder, and Polaroid photos depicting a horrifying scene. The officer asked what was going on. Matthew described the contents of the bag, still shaken. "There is blood on these pictures, so much blood!" he shouted into the phone. "Calm down, sir," the officer said, wincing at the volume. "Is the blood in the pictures or on them?" Matthew answered, "Both." That's when things took a dark turn. Matthew did not even bother with the gun. He didn't want his fingerprints anywhere near it. The tape recorder, however, he dared to handle again. Using the bag as a barrier, Matthew pressed play. The moment the tape began, his jaw dropped. It was a full confession from the person who robbed the bank shown in the photos. What was meant to be a simple heist had turned into something far more tragic. Someone had died. Officer Henry, still on the line, immediately took the situation more seriously after hearing about the tape. He told Matthew to stay put, informing him that backup was already on the way. His thoughts turned to the man who sold him the car. Could he have been involved? Just then, the police arrived. 2 officers stepped out of the car and approached. They asked Matthew if he was all right, but quickly moved on to the reason they came. They had already traced a lead to the vehicle's former owner, but first, they had to speak with the impound lot owner. They told Matthew he would need to come with them. At the lot, the owner recognized Matthew and waved. That smile faded fast when the officers explained what they had found in the car. He seemed genuinely shocked to hear that a police vehicle from his lot was potentially linked to a serious crime. The officers questioned the man while carefully analyzing his responses. Matthew, too, watched closely, hoping the story would match his own. Fortunately, it did. The lot owner confirmed that a man who he now realized had been a cop had dropped off the car, saying it was meant for demolition. He led them into his office and opened a filing cabinet, pulling out a document. "Here's the signature," he said. Every car donor had to sign paperwork, and this file was proof. The officers immediately recognized the name. "This is the missing link," one said. "We've got him." They explained the situation to both men. The car, the gun, and the tape all belonged to a former officer from their own precinct. Matthew noticed one of the officers trembling with anger. "He was one of us! How could he do this?" The policeman remembered clearly when his colleague insisted on taking the case. At the time, no one thought much of it, but looking back, it should have raised suspicion. That officer had one goal in mind: getting rid of the evidence. He repainted the car and pushed for it to be demolished. Crushing it would have erased any trace of the crime. By repainting it first, he disguised its identity and separated it from its police origins. "We have to catch him," Matthew urged. The officers nodded. Then one smiled and said, "I have a plan." They asked the impound lot owner if the car could be returned to its original spot. He agreed, though puzzled. The idea was simple but strategic feature the car in a news report, hint at its role in a reopened investigation, and hope the guilty party would panic. If the former cop saw it, he might come back to destroy the evidence himself. The plan went into motion. The car was returned to the lot, a short news segment aired, and then they waited. Just 1 day later, it worked. That night, someone broke into the lot. Surveillance footage only captured a masked figure, but the police had little doubt it was their former colleague. He cut the fence and crept through the lot, unaware that officers were hiding nearby. He was arrested immediately, handcuffed, and placed in the back of a police car, the same model he once used to hide the evidence. Though Matthew wasn't allowed to be present at the arrest for safety reasons, he didn't miss a thing. The event was covered live on TV due to the case's scale, and he watched with satisfaction as the man was taken into custody. Justice had prevailed. But there was one issue left. Matthew still didn't have a car. A few days later, he heard his mailbox rattle. A letter had arrived. It looked official. Curious, Matthew opened it. Inside was a message from the local police department thanking him for his help. They also invited him to the station for something special. When he arrived, more than 30 officers stood clapping and cheering in his honor, but the real reward waited out back. There, a row of newly serviced cars was lined up, each ready for use. He was told he could choose one as a token of appreciation. Matthew picked the plainest one of them all, a gray station wagon. It wasn't flashy or fast, but it was dependable. After everything that had happened, normal was exactly what he wanted. As he drove away, a quiet sense of pride filled him. He had helped solve a crime, brought justice to light, and earned something far greater than just a car. What an adventure, he whispered, smiling to himself.